JB, folks can see the clock is already up. We are not fooling around on this lightning prediction segment. Excuse me. But there's a reason we want to start right away naming these teams. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we've got a very special guest today, so we got to get through these picks, Frank. We got 9 of them
Don't tell
to
too
do
much.
in 6 minutes. So,
with 6 minutes, who put 6 minutes on this clock? Who's the person that did that to us?
You'd like to do at least like 9, maybe 1 minute per conference, but I guess less is more. We're getting near the end of the year. It's time for us to speed things up here. Lightning round.
Let's see here. First things first, let's make sure the music's going to go.
There it is.
It sounds familiar. And then I'm going to say to you, James, tell the first game.
The first game is going to be probably impact the New England Bowl. Curry versus Salve and the CCC.
Wow, listen to you. I'm just so impressed I can't even start the clock. Here we go.
You didn't even start the clock. You're just
the clock's gone. It's going. Oh, wait, we got to go. I believe it's going to be Salve Regina team that's rejuvenated after a Curry team that's a little bit disappointed from last week. It's a home game for Salve Regina in what will be cold Newport, Rhode Island, because it's just darn cold in this segment of the country coming up this weekend. And so I will say Salve Regina wins this one 41-30. I think we'll see some offense.
Yeah, I think Salve is going to ride the running back and probably pound the ball with about a high of 30, 35 degrees. So I will also take the Seahawks in a lower scoring game, I think 27-21.
We got to be faster, I think. So go ahead. Next up.
Okay. Gallaudet versus SUNY Maritime in the ECFC.
I like the Privateers in this one. They're fighting to go 9-1. They're not going to have any playoff consideration. We know that they're the only one-loss team in the East that is not getting consideration in the regional rankings, essentially. And so I will say SUNY Maritime does win this game for pride and for a good bowl slot by the score of 50-24.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I think Tom is right, and company will right the ship, as they say, and we'll win this one, say 45-32.
Right the ship, eh? Why don't we just move on from that?
Yeah. Cortica. Cortland versus Ithaca.
My quick hit this week is saying that Ithaca is going to be a 6-4 playoff team. That Union beats RPI, which is coming up in a little bit. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Cortland beats Ithaca. Ithaca's only 2-2 versus Empire 8 teams this season. And Cortland is a decent Empire 8 team that's had some real disappointments along the way. I think they're going to have the strength to come back and beat Ithaca here by the score of 40-37.
Yeah, Cortland has both won and lost really close games, but I do think that the Bombers have a little added here to go to the playoffs. So I think the Bombers are going to pull this one out on a sort of a last play win, 31-30.
Next.
In the Liberty League, the Shoes, RPI versus Union.
I think I already said Union wins this game. I think they bounce back from the Ithaca loss well. RPI playing at Union, it's never easy, and you know that, James, from having played there and seen that yourself. Union wins this game 27-26.
Yeah, I like the Dutchman also, although RPI, since they've got that new freshman quarterback going, have won 4 straight. So maybe I'll take the Engineers to counter your pick there. I think they'll pull it out 31-27.
And that quarterback's last name is what?
Marianopoulos.
Oh, you got it. Nice job. Next up.
All right. In the MAC, Widener versus Del Val.
I can't pick against Delaware Valley. There's just no conceivable way to do it right now. Number 7 team in the country that just keeps rolling. Widener's a team that's up and down, but has been consistent in the win-loss column at least. But in the games themselves, the game flows, it's just all over the place for them this season. It feels like that 9-7 win versus Albright comes to mind. So I'm going to give this to Delaware Valley, 42-21.
Yeah, I think Del Val, their defense will actually really give the Pride a hard time, and they'll win it 35-7.
I think Mascac's next.
Mascac, State against Framingham.
Upset. We pointed out, Worcester State 6-3 this season. They're one of the only 5 3-loss teams left in the East, and they did that very quietly. The Lancers are going to win this game and shock Framingham State in their closing statement here by a score of 21-20 in a cold game.
Yeah, I think Framingham, it's going to be a close call, but I think the Rams will pull it out late like they did against WestCon. I'll give this one to Framingham, say 31-27.
Skip the NUMAC for 1 second. Let's go to the NJAC.
Okay,
oh, you're going NESCAC?
We'll do Frostburg. Yeah, why not? Amherst, the littlest big game in America. I think I picked the Mammoths, 31-27.
I picked the East.
I'm going to go with that
Ray.
score.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's going to be Williams in this one. 31-27. It's going to be a great game. NJAC.
NJAC, Frostburg versus Salisbury. Bobcats need to win to stay in playoff contention. I think that'll be added motivation. It'll be a close call, but I think in a high-scoring offensive game, I'll take the Frostburg State Bobcats 42, Salisbury 35.
Yeah, I was tempted to pick Salisbury in this game, but I just can't see any basis for it right now. So I say Frostburg State does win this game 31-21. But going away, they're going to have to pull away in this game. I think that Kane scare woke them up. In the NUMAC, it's not the game many people would think we're going to pick here, but hold on. MIT at Springfield. Yep. And so I'm going to say Springfield is just rolling here. I think I'm going to echo everything you say here. Essentially, the triple options in effect. They're getting hundreds and hundreds of yards on the ground, and the number 1 rushing offense in the country. Springfield wins this game 42-31. It's going to be close. Go ahead.
Yep. With apologies to my former teammate Chad Martinovich at MIT, I do think this is the Pride's year. They're going to finish the season 10-0, get the Pool B bid in the playoffs, and they will win this game and the inaugural NUMAC championship by a score of 49-35.
Well, we're both seeing some offense being shown by MIT in that game, that's for sure. JB, some people may be thinking we're avoiding a certain game in our list here. We did not include a certain NUMAC game. We talked instead about MIT Springfield, which is really, if Springfield wins it, they will probably go to the NCAA playoffs this season.
Yep.
It's there in Pool B. But there's this game that's in New London, Connecticut. I heard it's a kind of decent game that's coming up. In fact, we broke our all-time video view record with a guest from one of these schools this week. So there is some excitement surrounding this. Yeah, 10 out of 10. You got it. But
right.
We wanted to actually bring in, as we do from time to time, somebody, we won't call him an expert on this, but somebody that's got a little bit extra incentive to be watching this game because, in fact, he's an ESPN analyst that will be broadcasting the game. And before I go too deep into all that, I'll have you introduce him because I think you have a jersey on for a certain reason right now. It's not too often get to talk about pro football on our show, but this is definitely going to kind of merge into that a little bit.
Yeah, well, everyone knows that I'm a New England guy at heart, and born in Boston, grew up there, and I've got Habit and all those other yads in the garage and all that stuff. But we have a very special guest today, a former player with the New England Patriots. He's got, I think, 3 rings, Frank. NESN commentator, does a blog and a podcast with the Patriots, which I listen to. It's great. We're very privileged to have him on the show. Matt Chatham from now ESPN3. You're going to be covering the Secretary's Cup. We're giving you your Division III indoctrination here. How you doing, Matt?
Doing wonderful. For me, it's a flashback. I grew up in Iowa, and we're surrounded by Division III football, and I don't ton of it out here with my normal week-to-week work, but when I saw it on the schedule, I was like, all right.
Hey, well, that's one question I wanted to ask you. I mean, when did you see this, and what was your first reaction? Was it kind of like, who? And did somebody say it's like Army-Navy, it's just Division III? Or what was the reaction, and how do you feel about going in to do this game right now?
I'll put it this way. I have healthy for guys that do that, because I think, there's been enough guys that I played with even at the NFL level. One example, London Fletcher went to John Carroll. Co-College, what's his name? Fred Jackson from the Buffalo Bills. Co-College is a small school there in Iowa. And I know enough of those kind of stories, and I have enough friends that played, that I played with in high branch and went to other places, that I had a tremendous amount of respect for. And I know sort of that idea of, you're not going to have a full ride scholarship necessarily, and you know that the guy that's willing to go do that for 4 years really, really loves the game. You appreciate that. And a lot of times the guys that are willing to go do that, where there's not a lot of money involved to do so, those make up the men's leagues afterwards, or they go play club, or they try football their life because they just really have that inherent love of the game. You don't always see that. It's our level. Some say the money, or I'm not playing this game. So if you're a purist, you really love the game of football, you're going to see kids out there that just love to do it.
Well, you came from South Dakota, I believe, for college football wise, which doesn't exactly feed into the NFL automatically by any stretch of the imagination. Tell us about your pathway. I mean, you got to have a certain association with these guys. Yeah, maybe you got a ride of some sort to South Dakota, but obviously you had to prove yourself and then get to, I think you were picked not even by the Patriots originally. You were undrafted and then got eventually into a system that pretty much gave you 3 rings. I don't know if you have them on or anything, but we will vouch for the fact you have 3 rings.
They're too heavy, Frank. It'd make his hand. He wouldn't be able to pick up his coffee cup if he put it
Exactly. It's heavy enough.
But how did you get there?
Well, my corner of the world is Sioux City, Iowa, and Iowa sits in 3. So North Sioux City is actually in South Dakota. South Sioux City is in Nebraska, and proper is in Iowa. So I ended up going to the University of South Dakota. That's 45 minutes away from home, and it's a Division II school when I was there, but now it's a school. So in those days, the scholarship limits are pretty stringent. There's one full ride per class, and I was fortunate for mine, but that creates sort of an oddball situation with the rest of the guys, right? You're sort of in a room full of halves or partials or none at all. So that's sort of the Division II spread, where there's nothing, and one where everyone's sort of on a ride. So I certainly have a healthy respect for what it takes for guys that aren't getting a lot of money to try to make their way through. But for me, I played well at that level. Went to something called Bowl, which back in the day was sort of Division II's version of the Senior Bowl. Did there and got attention, but had a knee thing as I was coming out. So wasn't going drafted, knew that, but I was prototype size more or less, and was fortunate enough to hook on with the Rams. Were immediately picked up on waivers by the Patriots. So, and then I was there for 6 years. We're going to spend 3 with the Jets. So, and I know James, I should probably the part of my history try to not look back at those Jets years, but no, it was very rewarding. I think because you went the long hard.
I was at MetLife Stadium the other day, and you were not on the Ring of Honor. I hate to break this news to you, but you know what? You've got more Super Bowl rings than they do, so that should be a little solace for you.
There you go.
So let's talk about the game a little bit. I know you haven't gotten a grand amount of time to pre-prep, but you got a little discussion with the coaches, and Coach Troop has been a friend of the show for years with us, and he's an imposing guy. You guys are about the same size. In fact, I want to tell you, Coach Mike Troop is somebody that scares us, frankly, intimidates us a little bit, but he's the nicest guy ever to us. But his team comes in, obviously, looking like they have the edge here with what's happened this season. Coast Guard would love to punctuate their season after, I think, losing 5 straight with a win here. What's your feel for this game? And you've played in rivalry games, I'm sure, throughout your career.
Sure.
Do you throw the records completely out the door in something like this, do you think?
You really do. For me, it was South Dakota State. That's sort of our rivalry. And one of the things that, when you go to these ESPN games, you get an opportunity to talk to both sets of coaches, right? Coordinators from both sides and both head coaches. And it was really something through all 6 guys that they echoed the notion that no matter where either of us are at with our seasons, with the health of rosters, anything like that, we're both essentially anticipating a one-score game. It's just you have to kind of go in preparing for as much. There's a hit being comparable to that, and there's that sort of respect for the other side, regardless of what they've done against other people. So I think that makes it kind of fun. And as I got into Merchant Marine a little bit, I think one of the things that for me is understanding that these are the kind of matchups when you get another Surface Academies from you, that notion of the weight limit thing, or the naval body fat thing, I think it kind of goes out the door a little bit, because some of these things are a little more over the top when you look at it too deep, and you look at a 220-pound offensive lineman against maybe a 270, 80-pound tackle at the D3 level on the other side. But in this particular instance, there's a lot of that sameness on both sides. So I don't think there's some overwhelming size advantage either. So that was usually sort of the rationale why the triple option could still be so effective. Lighter, quicker, long extended drives. You can win goals and leverage and all those kinds of things. This is different because the defensive tackles are small also now here, and the lines aren't traditional size. So I think that makes it kind of fun and fascinating. You don't have sort of be like feel, and I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. Now, these teams have definitely had a pretty healthy rivalry over the last year. Last season, actually, the game was in Connecticut also, in New London, and it took a kind of a turnover and a late touchdown by the Merchant Marine to kind of pull it out. So anything goes in these Secretary's Cup games. We spoke with one of the senior captains from Merchant Marine earlier this week, and he described the environment as hostile, to use a military term. There's going to be a lot of cadets on both sides, all decked out in their white or gray, whatever they're going to be wearing. And it's going to be a very loud and excited stadium, even though it's not in, big, it's not going to be in a big pro football stadium in like Philadelphia, like the Eagles or something like that. But it's going to feel like a real down-home knockout rivalry game for sure.
It's something I can really appreciate this, where when you get to play in bigger venues, when you get to play in the NFL, time college football, which I wasn't at the collegiate level, but some of my best recollections is environment didn't necessarily mean it was on Monday Night Football, because sometimes the big caverns can be loud, but you don't have the intimate feel. I remember some game as a young player against St. Cloud State up in Minnesota, very small, almost a prison-like feel, kind of like longest yard kind of venue, but it was packed and it was rowdy, and maybe you're a little bit comparable to, but at halftime you go back up underneath the stand. It has sort of a dank kind of feel, old green chalkboard, but when you go outside, I mean, for what little stands there are, it's basically standing room alone, and there's a passion out there that you can certainly feel out on the field. So I felt some of my most energetic sort of, spine tingling kind of hair on the end kind of things at some of my collegiate stuff as much as the NFL. The NFL is just a bigger feel. Again, I think when you get into a rivalry situation and you get into sort of a cool on the water, just unique environment that we're going to get to see this weekend, there's certainly value in that. It's different value, but it's something that I think players out there can certainly feel.
Yeah, the Thames River that you overlook over there is a beautiful vista, a beautiful overlook. However, it will be darn cold this weekend.
A little bit.
It is not a heated venue, I will tell you. They may give you a space heater. It will not be nearly enough with the weather this weekend. But you're used to it. Foxborough is right down the street from where you live still, and so you definitely are used to that. You work with Dave Weekly in this game. I know you've worked with him before this season. Kind of take us through what you do leading up to a game like this. You're going to probably sound like the most knowledgeable person when the game gets on the air about the Mariners and the Bears when it comes down to it. But obviously you don't start with any body of knowledge with these teams, because Division III is something that ESPN covers, I believe, 4 times a year. This game, the 2 semifinals, and the championship game down in Salem, which I'll be in the sideline for with D3Football.com. So, we get to see the ESPN folks, and they're always kind of asking us some information. They want to know about the teams, obviously, just like I'm sure you've tried to get your body of knowledge up throughout the week. So take us through how you do get prepped for a game like this and why you'll sound like a very knowledgeable person on it.
Well, one of the biggest things that, now being a former player and being in this role, you start to look back at it and kind of understand the roles, what people sort of do in the production of a game. The guy that's the play in this event, David Weekley, David is really the knowledge base for me. And it's really important for me to have a rock like him in there because roster guys' backgrounds, their histories, school histories, the anecdotes. As you watch back broadcasts on TV, it's usually generates from that guy. The color guy is by and large to tell you what and to analyze it through experience. And the one head need to have as I go into the game is an understanding of scheme and expectation and the things they generally do and who their best players are and things like that. So I don't need to necessarily on a week in, week out basis get into the what such and such did in high school or what such is going to do after graduation, or that's not really sort of my role. So for me, into the two deeps, it's finding out sort of health of roster where guys are. Typically there might be a 2 or 3 that are up or down or in different positions, or there's some pre-game workouts of some sort where we're going to have a decision if a guy's going to play, and that might dramatically change the secondary, might shift the linebacker group or whatever it may be. But by and large, it's just getting up to speed on what they do and telling you what I see and trying to put it in a framework of my own experience. So it's I would say, without equivocation, my job's easier than Dave's. He's got a lot more
my
legwork.
job is easier than Frank's. I totally got you, man.
I'm the play-by-play of this team, and he's the color commentator, so I'm not going to object to anything you just said necessarily. But JB is good with stats. He will just reel off stats. So JB, as we prepare to predict this, we're not going to make Matt predict this game because that's not fair to him, but we're going to have to do this and then get mean phone calls from fans of either team most likely. But why don't you reel off some important stats here that people should know going into this game. I picked up one earlier. I will take credit for finding this one. The Merchant Marine right now is the 3rd best average per game rushing team in Division III at this point coming into this game at over 300, let me get this right, 348.8 yards per game. Springfield is at 459 a game, which is incredible when you think about rushing yards per game. But and they beat up on Merchant Marine earlier in the season. But Merchant Marine's at that number. Coast Guard is more balanced attack. So James, what do you have in terms of numbers that you can feed here?
Well, I mean, I would say that the thing to keep an eye on is, and with triple option teams like the Mariners, is obviously they'll run. But the one thing that the Mariners have that not every triple option team can pull off is a quarterback that can drop back and throw the ball a few times. The quarterback for Merchant Marine, Bryce Moore, he's a senior, I think down from Florida where I am. Has been able to do that. They put up a lot of points, but their defense has struggled at times, particularly stopping the pass. So the one thing, if you're a Coast Guard fan, the Coast Guard offense is more spread. It's more option based in that respect. So if their receivers can start getting some separation. The Mariners have lost a little bit of talent in the defensive backfield to graduation. So keep an eye on that matchup, a key aspect of this game, and see how it plays out.
Well, it's going to be an interesting one for sure. The last, I think, 15 years, there's only been one game that was greater than 2 possessions at the end of the day, greater than 16-point separation between the teams, and that was a few years back. So this is going to be a tough one no matter what. Again, I think we could all agree, throw records out the door. Any other thoughts, Matt, you can give us before we have to pick this? Because we're treading on dangerous territory personally here. We're going to let you get off scot-free today, but what would you tell us to look at here?
Well, let's put it this way. So my sort of base against triple options dates back to college, and I think that's a lot of guys at this level can have some sort of reference point to a team that did it really well. So what scares you when you go into games like that is the 1 week of preparation. Now, understanding that Coast Guard has had plenty of exposure to this, and they may hit on another team or 2 or 3 that runs that style. But the big thing that coaches are concerned about, the big things that players are concerned about is just that your assignments. It's a real big assignment football where there's the possibility of a game being extremely close or the possibility of being an absolute blowout. If you start getting guys that are just gashed, 2 men in a gap, things like that, if you're not sort of stringent on what your rules and regs are in every little play, it can get out of hand. For me, it was North Dakota State. So as a young guy, North Dakota State was sort of, and all the spread off and stuff that you see now wasn't like that as a kid. They were the triple option team. It could be 45-0 in a minute if you just too many people on the pitch, no one on the quarterback, whatever it may be. And or one guy that I would say when talking to both staff, praise was effusive. So he seems to be the playmaker that everyone's centering their attention around, and it'll be fun for me just to watch the defensive fits. Are they on top of assignments? And if they are, well then all hands on deck. This could, who knows how the game will go. But if you start seeing assignment breakdowns, then it could be a beating.
All hands on deck.
Another stat I'll throw at you.
That was the intention, wasn't
it? Another stat I'll throw at you, Matt, is I think, as you know, having played at the highest level of football, turnovers are big. And turnovers have really hurt the Bears over the season. They've committed they have 20 interceptions over their last 9 games. Merchant Marines had a little issue with that as well, but they have about half of that number. Turnovers can play a big role, and I think especially in these rivalry games, something like a fumble or a pick six, something like that, really could change the complexion of the game pretty quick.
It's a great point, and I think one of the I was just to say one of the things that as a defense when you're facing a trip team is that ball handling becomes such a big part of the formula because there's so many different potentials. There's a pitch, there's a mesh point, there's a potential pulling it out. So ball handling is always really high. You're a defense and you need a little edge, right? Things haven't been going well for you. The triple option teams are the times where their ball availability, whether you get it or not, is yet to be seen. Getting in and punching out balls, in that moment where the exchange is, if you can hound on them and strip and hit it. I mean, it's an opportunity. You don't know that but if you're a defense looking for something, it can go either of two ways. You can get it off them more than you usually do, or you can get gashed.
Yeah, and as Frank mentioned, it'll probably be a high of 35, maybe if you're lucky.
Yeah.
That's a very cold football. You may want to put a little something in that coffee of yours for that game.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. And I love the noon games. Yeah, I love the noon games as a player, man. There's nothing greater than just getting up early, getting the gear on and going. That to me sort of fits the military theme here. I love that we're the coaches this week, and they're getting into how stringent these guys' schedules are, and the idea that they break for a couple hours a day to play football. And I'm like, man, these guys are some committed people. And then just to put the bow on it, they're going to go play their game on Saturday noon. They're getting up an hour before everyone else and knocking this thing out.
That's right.
Well, JB, heads or tails? Who's going first here, you or me?
Well, before we do a pick, I will say, and I'm sure Matt can appreciate this also. I mean, this is happening over Veterans Day weekend, and as much as old guys like us, although Matt is obviously younger than you and I, Frank.
Yes, he is.
We pick on the kids. We pick on the kids, but these are 18 to 21, 22-year-old young men who have decided on their own to basically dedicate their life not for 4 years in the academy, but even longer to serve the country, moving these giant ships, going into places that are not necessarily the safest in the world. They're giving up their cell phones when they walk in. I mean, these kids are probably more mature than I am sometimes. And it's just the whole Veterans Day weekend thing is just, I know this has been a rough year for our country in certain ways, but the kids from Coast Guard and Merchant Marine gives me hope. This is what this country is all about. These young people, they're self-sacrificing. They're putting country before themselves, and that's what really makes this game so much fun. Is that all the people there are there for very unselfish reasons. They're going to have fun. It's going to be a great football environment. Hopefully it's a great game. Some of the statistics look like it's going to be maybe more of a Mariners good game. But we'll see. But I guess we got to pick now, huh, Frank? So I gotta get in the crosshairs, as we say.
Oh yeah.
Toop is texting me as we speak. Who's Bakes picking? Who's Bakes picking? Bakes, go ahead. That's James's nickname from Coach Toop. Go ahead, Bakes.
There you go.
All right. Well, I think that the triple option offense and actually I think the Mariners defense is going to be really the difference in this one. I think it's going to be close for a while, but I will give the Mariners a slight edge down the stretch. They're going to pull away this one 35-24.
The danger for Merchant Marine, we saw this early in the season, is that when Bryce Moore is forced to pass, he is not efficient. I think he had 5 interceptions in a game in which they fell behind early on in the game and tried to will his team back with a must-pass situation. That's the problem with the triple option. If you're behind in the second half by more than 2 possessions, you just don't have enough time to get back in that game with just the pure run offense at that point, or trying to mix in 1 or 2 passes with run offense. And so if Coast Guard can keep this close or even have a lead at halftime, it's going to really change the dynamic of this game. And you really got to go back, I think, to that Springfield game earlier in the season to look at some of this as well. But I have a confidence level right now that Merchant Marine is just kind of clicking again after a couple tough weeks in the middle of their season, and they will win this game. It will be close ultimately, but I think they're going to keep enough separation on the scoreboard to be safe in this game, 34-27 in favor of Merchant Marine Academy. Again, another less than or a 2-possession game or better, which has been really the history of this matchup for a long time. Matt, we were talking about your podcast earlier. Why don't you tell folks a little bit about it, so if they want to hear more of you besides the ESPN3 work and the Nesson work that you do a lot of Nesson work, I know. NESN is Nesson for those that are not in the New England area and know about it. But New England
it's wicked awesome,
dude. Yeah,
it's wicked awesome, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, New England Sports Network is where my main gig is, but as JB would know, we do the Real Thing Patriots podcast, and it grew out of Football by Com website is basically now all podcasts. So we do a week where this is obviously intended for a more dedicated audience of Patriots. But what's unique about the show is with myself hosting it, former player from the next team. So in this particular example, we play with the Patriots, played the Broncos this week. So Matt McChesney, an old teammate of mine with the Jets that also played for Denver, that also played for Buffaloes, that runs a big performance center out there called 6-0 Strength in Denver that places a ton of players around the end. He comes on the show. So it's basically players on a station each and every week previewing the upcoming games. So with the Real Thing Patriots podcast, and other than that, it's juggling that, getting your nest and stuff in, and then getting ready for college football on the weekend. So keeps me busy, and my hockey games between that. So we've got to wedge those in between all the other engagements.
How about a shout out to your kids? Because I know you lead up with that on your Twitter handle, which is Chatham58, I believe, on Twitter.
Yep.
That's correct. So little Lex, my buddy Lex, is a 9-year-old. He's playing squirts hockey right now. So I'm football guy, four sport dude in high school coming up. But we actually grew up in Sioux City, Iowa. Sioux City, Iowa has juniors hockey. So it's the USHL, which is like Thunder Bay, Ontario, Omaha, Des Moines, Sioux City's program. But it's a really good juniors program. A bunch of kids come in there at 17, 18, and maybe 19 years old, and something like 70, a crazy number, I'm not sure, 75 to 80%, something in that range of the kids go on to D1 hockey. They go to D, they go to the University of Minnesota, they come out here to all the schools in the East. So we sit in the middle of sort of a non-Northeast, but a pretty intense hockey area out there. But I didn't grow up doing it. Now that I live out here in New England, I'm kind of a New Englander, I guess, and my son is raised in it. So between all these other football things I got going on, he's got hockey 4 nights a week. So we're having fun with that. And my daughter Em, my daughter Em's the 5-year-old, and I think she's actually the athlete in the family. So she's running around crazy on the soccer field and get ready to roll. So
she's probably running the show too. She's like my daughter.
She really is. She really is. Hey, well, and big credit to them. They're home today with the holiday up, so they didn't interrupt the show at all. So thanks, kids.
Thank you, kids. We do appreciate that. Matt, we appreciate your time. We, again, bring you some warm clothes tomorrow. It will be cold. I've been, at my first game I called in 1995 on the radio was Union College at Coast Guard Academy, and I don't think they've changed the press box one bit since 1995. So be prepared, but it's a beautiful scenic setting over there, and it's worth every penny of what you'll have to spend on warm gear just to witness it. And I do want to get to one of these Coast Guard Merchant Marine games in full. I've been to the pregame before, but never actually through the whole game. And someday I will get the honor, I guess, to do that.
I know we're trying to wrap things up, Matt, but for fans who are like, I want to watch this game, and they know ESPN3, maybe you can't just pop it up on your television screen. I mean, I know maybe you talk to fans through how you find it, whether it's on your computer, on your phone. How do we tune in for your call on Saturday?
See if I can actually pull this up in live time. So what you do and what I always do, it's been a great resource for us, is you get to the, let's see, is it showing up there?
There you go.
Yep, it's there.
Entertainment. Yep, I can see that.
It's the ESPN app. Here, we'll pull it back again.
There you go.
But you go to the ESPN, the Watch ESPN app. You'll log in. It's usually done through your cable provider, and you'll be able to sort of upcoming games, and it's a streaming service. So I'm not. It kind of depends week to week when we're doing games. Occasionally, we'll be at a Syracuse game, and Syracuse, some local broadcast is taking on the game, and you can find it on a local channel. I think here, mostly streaming this weekend. So you go to the app, you stream the games. Actually, the way that I watch the University of South Dakota games weekend. So when I'm not doing a game and it's maybe before or after, hopefully it hits that way, I can sit and watch it on my phone, watch it on my iPad, even watch it back home and stream and watch the game. So it's a cool new service. I think that's kind of where life is going. So if it's not on your TV, that doesn't mean you still can't get it.
And noontime Eastern time is when it will be on live. I think sometimes they do put archives up later on, depending on the sport and the event. But watch it live, folks.
Absolutely.
And listen for Matt. You now know him a lot better, and you'll have a little bit more connection to this game as well. Matt, thank you for joining us. And JB, we're going to have a lot of content throughout the weekend. It is Selection Sunday on Sunday. We'll have Darla Kirby, the selection chair, join us. We will post that interview right after the selections are released by the NCAA. Thanks to the NCAA for giving us a little trust on this year's selections so that we can have that ready to go. And we'll also have the Empire State Bowl teams named on our show as well on Sunday. Yep. Yeah. So not the ECACs. We'll be dealing with those on Monday or Tuesday. Monday, I think it is, correct? But the ECACs could affect Merchant Marine, Matt. So
Monday we have the ECAC, the Eastern Collegiate Athletic Conference Bowl bids, which if Merchant Marine wins, they will be eligible and they'll be in the running. There's about 20 teams that are out there. There's 8 games, so there's 8 slots. And so hopefully the Mariners can win the Secretary's Cup. They will have a shot at their first postseason game in about 15 years. So aside from the rivalry riding on this, there is a postseason bowl game for them down in Delaware the ticket could be punched on Monday.
Guys, thanks again, and we will see everybody this weekend in one way, shape, or form or another. Thanks.
All right, thanks for having me on. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Matt.